Gray is here on the Blaze Radio Network.
Good morning, American. It's Friday.
Welcome to it. Thanks for joining us. Another big weekend. They're all big, though. They're all big, college football-wise. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, they're all.
Absolutely.
This is a huge weekend for BYU. They need to go 8-0. Huge weekend. Okay.
Playing UCF.
They're playing the toughest 3 and 4 team in the country.
That's for sure. They
they're
should be
good.
3 and 4.
You know, they're actually pretty good.
Yeah, they are.
And so that's why I guess the unbeaten 11th ranked team of the country is an underdog to
How's
them.
that possible?
I don't know.
How's that possible?
An unranked
An underdog to an
team.
unranked team?
Crazy.
I know. I mean,
weird
I'm with you.
situation.
My team has beaten ranked teams and fallen in the polls. I don't understand it either. So.
Who is the ranked team they beat and then they fell?
Boston College.
Oh, okay. And they were what, 25th or something at the time?
They were ranked in the top 25.
Don't worry about where they were.
I'm just telling you they were ranked.
So Missouri's got Alabama, though, this weekend.
In Tuscaloosa.
Maybe winnable? I don't know. Hopefully, huh? It's winnable.
You're darn right it is.
It's winnable.
You're darn right it is.
Yes.
Sure, our best back won't be there, but whatever.
Oh boy.
There comes the excuses.
Oh, man. Here they come.
Brady Cook is injured. Don't worry about it.
We were
though.
down to our 5th string running back for the first 3 weeks. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't have any sympathy, and I keep hearing these excuses from their quarterback, their starting quarterback is injured. So what? Okay, we all have that.
Absolutely.
Everybody has
every week,
injuries.
Absolutely. That's the game. Next up.
Right. I mean, it's big-time football.
That's right. That's
Do a
what
better
makes,
job
step
of
up.
recruiting.
yeah,
you know?
I mean, that's
Yep.
what makes the SEC so strong is the depth.
Right.
That's
right.
I know you like to pretend
right.
that you're in the
Oh,
big
I don't
league
pretend
now
anything.
over there
We
at
are
the
in the big
12.
time.
Yeah.
We are in the big time.
I know.
That's right.
They finally let you in. But after we left. But I'm just telling you, what makes those teams so great is the depth. Next man up.
Exactly. Yes, everybody's got a good starting 22.
Yes.
But what do you have after that?
Right.
Can you win with your 5th and 6th string running back? And the answer was yes. In our case.
So far.
So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm a little nervous because I don't understand how they're the underdog
I don't
this
either.
weekend.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean,
What does it take to convince the country this is not the team you thought they were in the beginning of the season? What does it take? I mean, how many wins do they have to have? How many
you just got to win. We've talked about that early on. You just got to win. You just got to win.
You do.
That's all.
And so we'll see. If they lose, then I guess that was deserved. But if they win, it shows that that's I think it's really motivating them. I think they're really
good.
They're getting sick of it.
Good. Because, I mean, really, you could make the case that the people that, were besmirching them early on are going to continue to besmirch them to prove themselves right, rather than say,
True.
My gosh, these guys are great.
We were wrong about
Yeah.
them. They're really good. And Nebraska has who?
Don't
what?
worry about it.
Don't worry. Oh, is it Ohio State weekend?
It's Ohio
Oh,
State.
man.
In Columbus.
Oh, wow. After what Indiana did to them, they'll either be fired up and ready to prove that they're not that bad, or they just got destroyed mentally, and we'll see what happens this week. It'll be 85-0.
I like it that it's at 11 a.m. so we can get that ass kicking over with early in the day. I can enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
11 a.m. start? Wow.
At the U. Oh, man.
It's a tall order.
That's a tall order.
Tall order.
I don't feel like they're going to
Don't forget, Nebraska fans, we're still sitting at 5 wins, just barely
Just
out
need
of
one
reach
more.
of a bowl
Just
game.
need one more.
Just
I mean,
like
we're
we
already
were,
bowl eligible.
We were
so.
over a month left in the season last year when we were sitting at 5 wins. So we got a little bit more time to get that last elusive 6th win. Please.
Yeah, BYU was at 5-2 last year too, and then they lost their last 5.
Right.
Which is
that was a tough.
Yeah.
Oof.
That was
a
rough.
tough stretch.
That was rough. All right. So, a lot going on. We're 11 days from the election now.
11 days.
We are 87 days. Is that right? From the inauguration?
Oh, yeah. I got your list here. Election day, 11 days. Don't forget Thanksgiving. 34 days to get your turkey.
Okay.
61 for Christmas. And then inauguration, 87. Yes. So a lot could happen between now and then.
Oh, my.
Oh, boy.
Isn't that the truth?
A lot could happen.
Yep.
I mean, that's an eternity.
Yep.
And hurricane season ends, is it a week from today, I think? November
end
1st.
of
It's supposed to be over.
sometime in there, yeah. But with El Nino,
look out for Patty out
the
there.
Climate change.
Patty, Hurricane Patty is it
there's
just
no
a
hurricanes.
disturbance?
There's no
Not yet.
hurricanes out
It's
there.
not yet,
No,
but
there's no hurricanes.
Tropical
out there.
storm.
There's no depressions. Nothing.
Okay. There's nothing?
Nothing.
Really?
The tropics have.
There's not
nothing
even
right
a
now.
disturbance?
Nope.
I don't know.
Not a depression?
Jeffy's the weatherman.
Nope.
All right.
Just listen to him.
So the atmosphere's been taking Xanax. It's got no depression.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
That's
See what I
funny.
did?
You're not even going to drop
That's
a rim
funny.
shot for
You know,
that one? That was
Probably should have.
I mean, maybe the government just put Xanax in the air to calm it down.
Sure.
Isn't that what we're talking about today?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Well,
what we're
anyway,
talking about today.
out there in the Gulf again, could be on the same path as Helene and Milton.
Now, I looked at the hurricane website, the Hurricane Center website yesterday, and there was nothing, no
Nothing.
depressions, nothing.
But they're saying it could develop within the next.
well,
5
yeah,
days.
it could. Yeah, we could
Well,
have
monkeys
80
could fly out
thank
my
you.
butt, but-
Thank you.
It probably won't happen. Right? So that's what you're saying.
I'm just
Jeffy.
saying there's nothing out there.
Okay. All right. Good.
But, I mean, you're right, Keith. It probably could happen.
Well, it
I
could.
didn't use the word probably, did I? I don't think so.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I don't know. We'll have to roll
possible.
the tape back.
I'd rather not go back.
Be nice if we don't get any more.
Yes, it would.
That'd be great. So
Yeah, I mean, they're still
that would mean
cleaning
we
up
had
in
2
Florida,
major
and the
hurricanes.
Carolina is really bad. Yeah, I mean, there's
2 in a season where they were calling for like 8 or 10 or something, and then 24 hurricanes overall. So, you know, we're going to talk to our first guest coming up here in a few minutes about the climate change nonsense, where they say that all of this is caused by climate change. Jeez, oh my gosh. So our first guest is Chris Martz from Millersville University, and he's got some thoughts on these more frequent, more intense hurricanes that are global warming related. And I think he is skeptical on the weather manipulation thing. Is that accurate? Yeah. Our second guest, next hour, top of next hour, is a big time believer. And what's his name, Chris? Dane Wiggins. Okay. And he really believes that we're in total control of the weather?
Yes. After a 1-hour conversation last night,
Oh no!
I'm in the boat.
Oh,
you're in the boat
nice.
now.
You're on board with
I'm
it?
on board.
Seriously?
I am so on board, Pat Gray.
Really?
So wait,
Oh.
so on board?
So on board.
Like
Were you here for the
everything?
Were you here for the fake moon landing guy?
No, I wasn't.
That was before your time.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
That
Would you have
was-
been on board with that, do you think?
Hell no.
No, okay.
No, we did go to the moon. What the hell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, of course we went to the moon.
wow, you guys.
So naive, aren't we? So naive.
sure, whatever.
We'll just believe anything the government tries to shove down our throats.
Well, your words,
So
not
naive.
ours.
So great. I love it, though, that there is that dichotomy here. I like it. It's good. So we actually have, do we have some
Okay, so
Joe Biden
Yeah, here's
related
another
material
conspiracy
today?
theory because I mentioned this before the show started today off air. And Jeffy, I don't know if you want to share your thoughts after we play this
Oh,
video.
well, I'm told
Absolutely.
that a fake jog turned into an actual jog.
Yeah.
We'll see what you think because
For a few steps?
I think our previous history with Joe Biden jogs has been 2, maybe 3
Oh, we've
quick
documented
steps,
it.
right?
Yeah, we've
Oh, it's like
documented
he
it.
stumbled.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
okay,
he stumbled.
this is so out of character.
Okay.
This is so many steps that we've not even. He shattered his old record of probably 4.
But
Look
Oh,
at this
yeah.
yesterday. Look at this. Oh, he sees the press.
Oh,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
oh
7,
yeah,
8,
that's an actual jog right there.
13,
Look at that.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Look at that.
All right, who is
So we're saying that's not Joe Biden. Is that
Yes,
what we're
that's
saying?
that's what I'm
Jeffrey
saying.
said.
That's what I'm saying.
That's not Joe Biden.
I'm heading to do something that should have been done a long time ago.
What's
Make a formal apology to the Indian nations for the way we treated their children
Oh my
for
God.
so many
I know.
years.
I know.
That's why I'm going.
But it's
that's
important.
why I'm
Okay,
going.
okay. Pause it.
I
Pause
was
it.
more
Pause it.
agonized over that
Yeah.
than the job.
Okay, and it's not important what he's saying there. It's
kinda
that
is.
it adds.
Kind of is.
Well, hold on. It actually adds to Jeffy's theory because you would expect him to come over there, bewinded.
Yes.
Just completely fumbling around with his words. This guy's coherent.
Yes.
The guy that just jogged 18 steps.
And that's the taller Joe Biden.
That is the taller Joe Biden.
That's the taller. That's the fake Joe Biden. That's not the real Joe Biden.
Fake Joe Biden is like 7'3".
There's no way that is my president.
That's great.
Well, that's not mine either, regardless of which Joe Biden it is. But I digress. That's interesting, though, huh?
So we're apologizing
to the Indians. Ugh. How many times we got to apologize?
I thought it wasn't okay to call them Indians. Didn't he use that word?
He sure did.
Yeah, you said Indians.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Play it again.
Not
Sam.
the Native Americans. Nothing. Yeah.
I think you're right.
Indigenous.
Watch this. Impressive.
See, there's no way that's
He's
my
training
president.
for like the marathon.
There I go. There I come. Watch me.
No way.
Look at me.
I don't believe it.
I love it.
I don't believe it. The real Biden's in his diapers in the building still.
Look.
I'm heading
Yeah.
to do something that should have been done a long time ago. Make a formal apology
Right, too.
to the Indian nation.
Yeah.
The
To an Indian nation.
Indian
Their children.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sure they call
Racist
themselves that.
son of a bitch.
I mean, they call themselves the Indian nation. But if there's multiple Indian nations, is he just out there apologizing
One at a time.
one at a time?
Yeah,
or?
I don't know.
You know what? If that
Maybe
keeps
every
him busy
Indian
for the
nation?
next few months,
I mean,
why don't you just do that?
All right.
I know, but okay, man, we apologized enough. Yeah.
And it's like, has there never been a formal apology for
To the
breaking
kids.
treaties and whatever?
Well, no, it's not. I think this is just to boarding school. You know, the hell on earth that it was going to any school, quite frankly. But I think he's just saying to the kids that were forced to assimilate through schools to the white man's ways.
Oh well, yeah. We taught our English
go.
to their young.
To their young.
I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but
But I bet they do now.
we took the whole Cherokee Nation
We did.
and we put them on that reservation.
All right.
So we took
we
away their native tongue and we
We sure did.
taught our English to their young.
Yeah. And he's apologizing to that now.
All the beads we made by hand, those are nowadays made in Japan, or even more nowadays, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, you know, Korea.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though they're so proud to live
And
so proud
yeah.
to die.
But
so I'm glad.
the Indian nations
Been
need to be apologized to.
Been a long time coming. Thank heaven he's going to do it.
I don't know if is he holding the press conference, at the casinos, or is he where are we holding the press conference to apologize to them?
I don't know, man.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
I really don't know.
Just wondering where it's going to happen.
But I'm sure it'll be good. I can't wait. Sure, we'll have some clips.
Well,
on Monday,
everything the man does is genius. If I'm not mistaken.
When's he doing his marathon that he was clearly training for?
Yeah,
I don't know. Or is it an Ironman competition?
Yeah.
Oh,
my son and son-in-law did one of those last week where they went through mud. They carried heavy like beams on their back up a hill.
How did
they
they
did
do?
really well. They loved it. They loved it. I'm like,
those are a lot of fun.
we have
Are they?
a different way
man.
to do
Are
this.
they fun?
I
Sure.
stopped doing them a few years ago. But
I remember when
prior
you and
to
I,
that, man.
you and I were on that
Oh,
Ironman
man.
team. Remember that? It was a good time. You didn't carry your weight.
The
though.
training.
Well, it's impossible.
Why would that be?
That's a tall task
Why?
for Jeffy to carry his weight. All right, what are we doing here? What do we got?
What are we doing?
What are we doing? Is it time for something?
All right. We're gonna get to our guest, Chris Martz, a research assistant, senior atmospheric research assistant at Millersville University. Talk to him about global warming and weather manipulation and several things coming up here in a minute. But first, let me tell you about preborn. You know, it's worth remembering this year that the Democrat National Convention offered free abortions in vans right out on the street outside the convention.
It was incredible.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's hard to think. And I think free vasectomies, too.
Yes.
But disturbing. Really disturbing and disgusting. The man who may be our next vice president doesn't just support abortion. He supports doctors being able to murder a child after he or she is born by just setting the baby aside and allowing it to die. Over 64 million lives have been wiped out from abortion in this country since Roe v. Wade, and millions more hang in the balance. We have a chance to change the hearts and minds of Americans. When a woman considering abortion seeks to end her baby's life, preborn is there. The power of the ultrasound combined with God's love doubles a baby's chance at life. One ultrasound is just $28. 5 would cost $140 if you can afford that. If you have the means, please consider a leadership gift to help save babies in a big way. Your tax-deductible donation of $5,000 will sponsor Preborn's entire network for 24 hours, helping to rescue 200 babies. To donate, dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Pat.
Pat Gray Unleashed.
All right, is Chris ready? Joining us today because we've just become fascinated with this weather situation. Ever since Helene and Milton hit Florida and up the East Coast, people have been talking about, all right, those acted strangely.
Yeah, specifically Helene. Helene really started it, yeah.
Right. So is there anything to that? And the other issue is that every time a weather event like this occurs, it's global warming. We start hearing the cries of global warming as if there have never been hurricanes before. We've never had a hurricane hit America. Well, we know that's absolutely
never
asinine.
Had tornadoes, never had rainstorms.
So we continually hear they're more frequent and they're more intense. So Chris joins us now to talk about all these things. Chris, welcome to The Blaze.
Thanks for having me on, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So tell us what your thoughts are on this is something we hear all the time, that these storms, whether it's hurricanes or tornadoes or whatever it is, happen more frequently and they're much more intense than they've ever been because because global warming. What are your thoughts on that?
That's actually, there's been no increase in hurricane intensity on a global scale since good satellite records in both for both hemispheres began in 1980. Northern Hemisphere has good satellite data going back to 1966. Southern Hemisphere, it's kind of spotty until about 1980. So since 1980, we've had good global coverage. There's been no increase in the number of global hurricanes. Actually, they've gone down over that 44-year time period. And then the number of major hurricanes has remained steady. There's a Category 3 or higher on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. Tropical cyclones, which have a maximum sustained wind speed of at least 111 miles per hour. And in the case of landfalling hurricanes in Florida specifically, Milton ranked Hurricane Milton ranked tied for, I think, 28th place. There's been 27 stronger hurricanes at landfall than Hurricane Milton. Helene did get into the top 10. I want to say it was number 8. But there's still been stronger hurricanes at landfall by the barometric pressure. And then look at in the last 10 years, or since 2017, so the last 7 or 8 years, we've had a total of 6 major hurricane landfalls in Florida. People are saying that that's unprecedented, but that's not necessarily that's not actually the case. You can go back to the late 1940s to early 1950s. Between 1944 and 1950, there were 7 major hurricane landfalls in Florida, which is what that graphic shows there. And so these storms are not
during the 2000s. I mean, we had a number in the 2000s as well.
Yeah, especially 2005,
2004
and 5 were really bad. And then Florida specifically went almost 11 years between Hurricanes Wilma in 2005 and Hermine in 2016 without a single hurricane landfall at all. And that's the longest period on record since 1851.
And where were the global warming people then? Where were they screaming more frequent, more intense during that 11-year period?
It's kind of funny because a lot of people forget about that.
They do. Interesting how we just forget about that.
Right.
Yeah.
We just won't talk about that. Shh.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about Milton is that it ranked it tied for 69th place for as far as hurricane rankings by barometric pressure. So lower the pressure, generally the stronger the storm. Milton was 69th. So it wasn't even in the top 30 most intense. And then Helene ranked 21. It tied for 21st place. So these storms, there's nothing unprecedented. And that's for the total United States landfalls, by the way. That's not Florida, but it's for total United States landfalls. Going back to 1851 when the Hurd at 2 record begins.
And it's considered major if it's Category 3 or above. Is that right?
Correct. That's when the tropical cyclone, which is an umbrella term for hurricanes, are specifically tropical cyclones, which are warm core, non-frontal synoptic scale cyclones with organized deep convection about a well-defined center that originate over tropical or subtropical waters. Hurricanes are a subset of tropical cyclones where the maximum sustained wind speed is 74 miles an hour or greater, and they're classified as major hurricanes, Category 3, 4, or 5, where the maximum sustained wind speed is at least 111 miles per hour.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn, and we've talked about it here, so our listeners may not be, but there have been a total of, I think, 4 Category 5 hurricanes that have made it to shore as a Category 5 in the United States.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep, that would be Labor Day 1935, which is the most intense U.S. hurricane landfall. And it struck with a minimum barometric pressure of 892 millibars. Came out the Florida Keys, and it made landfall in the Panhandle. Then we had the second most intense, which was also the second Category 5 that we know of, was Hurricane Camille in 1969 made landfall at 900 millibars. Michael in 2018, which made landfall at 919 millibars. And then Hurricane Andrew, which I don't know what the pressure was off the top of my head, but that was in 1992.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that would shock people to know that only one of those hurricanes have even occurred during the time when we've been hammered with this global warming stuff. There's been one, and it was 2018.
What's interesting about Michael is that it actually was originally a Category 4 at landfall during the actual event. It wasn't until the end of the season when they did a post-analysis of it that they upgraded it to a Category 5. Oh. So it was originally a Category 4.
Wow.
Yes.
So you said that that Helene was actually in the top 10 most powerful. Did that make landfall? For Florida.
For Florida.
Okay.
It was tied. I think it was number 8 for Florida, but it was tied for 21st for the entire lower 48 of the United States.
Is there anything unusual about the way hurricanes are acting now as compared to past decades before we were all hysterical over global warming? Do they turn a different way? Do they stay powerful longer over land? Is there anything like that where global warmists have a point?
Well, their primary argument. By the way, Helene was number 9 for the United States, not number 8. Or not 9 for the United States. 9 for Florida. Was right. I just pulled up the chart. It's 9 for Florida. Okay, but to your point, their common argument is that warming sea surface temperatures or higher sea surface temperatures as a result of global warming, the record high sea surface temperatures in the Gulf this year are what fueled the accelerants behind the rapid intensification of Helene and Milton. And they claim there's these flash attribution studies. They're flash studies that get published by the World Weather Attribution, which is this organization that publishes studies immediately after an event. They did this study right after, not even 2 days after Milton made landfall, and they claimed that it was made worse by climate change. And these studies get widespread, they get large media circulation as if they're the gospel truth. Of course. But the reality is that you cannot do any sort of scientific, rigorous analysis just that quickly after a hurricane makes landfall and tie that. So I've created a chart, and it was a scatter plot where I looked at the June, July, August 3-month average sea surface temperature anomaly in the Gulf of Mexico relative to the 1991 to 2020 average, and versus major hurricane instance in the Gulf of Mexico maximum sustained wind speeds. And the June, July, August sea surface temperature, because the data comes in 3-month averages. I chose that one over the September, October, November average because sea surface temperatures are very slow to change for the most part because of water's high specific
And this was the
heat.
Gulf of Mexico, though. I mean, this was the
Yes.
Gulf, right? This was not the
Yes.
Atlantic. Because we have
This is
information.
specifically the Gulf.
Okay, because the information
And-
that we got from the Atlantic was that it was cooling.
Yeah, the Atlantic's been cooling the last several months, but to the point about the Gulf and also the Atlantic in a broader sense is that they've been at record high temperatures in the last couple of years. But again, our data on sea surface temperature globally is very iffy prior to the mid 2000s when we have when the Argo floats were deployed.
Okay.
Somewhat decent records go back to the 1980s, but before that, you're really just guessing. It's a lot of there's really large error bars and error in those estimates. But background climate warming does not explain the big spike in sea surface temperature that we saw in 2022, 2023, and then this year. The incident infrared radiation, which is the back radiation that comes down from that's emitted downward by, say, greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, it's effective enough in warming the air in such that it reduces the rate of outgoing long-wave radiation to outer space, the rate at which the Earth cools. But that radiation does not warm the water effectively. Try heating your pool with an infrared lamp. It's not going to work very well.
I have tried that. You're right. It doesn't work well at all.
So the incident infrared radiation from so-called back radiation from greenhouse gases, which is global warming theory, cannot explain a huge spike in sea surface temperature like that. What can, however, is an increase in absorbed solar radiation, ASR, and that is because the shortwave solar radiation has a lot more energy and it can warm the water. And what we've seen in the last few years, especially since 2020, is a big reduction in cloud cover, especially over the tropical Atlantic. And that includes in the Gulf of Mexico. There's been a reduction in cloud cover, and some of this might be tied to a reduction in sulfur dioxide and sulfate aerosol concentrations, which is due to a new regulation adopted by the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, in 2020, where they had an 80% cap on fuel or on sulfur content in shipping fuel. Because when sulfur burns during the combustion process in ships, it reacts with oxygen, forms sulfur dioxide, which once it's injected into the atmosphere, reacts with more oxygen and it becomes a sulfate aerosol. And that's a very powerful reflector of solar radiation. And it has a net cooling effect on the Earth. So when it's on, they have a very short lifespan in the atmosphere. We're talking, weeks to months. So when you suddenly get rid of that, you reduce that forcing, all of a sudden you get more sunlight coming in. And these particles, sulfate aerosols, also act as cloud condensation nuclei, which aids in the formation of these deep, low and mid-level clouds, which block solar radiation. So when you get rid of that, you reduce the cloud condensation nuclei, these little particles for water to condense onto. So more radiation is coming in, and it's warming the ocean. So yes, there's probably some of it's probably man-made, but it's not due to carbon dioxide emissions. And the record high sea surface temperatures in the last couple of years cannot be explained by just the gradual background warming. That just doesn't work like that. It has to be something else that's causing that. But the one thing I wanted to point out about the alarmists in the sea surface temperatures and storms is that if you look at the correlation between maximum sustained wind speed of Gulf of Mexico hurricanes versus the June, July, August sea surface temperature anomaly, there's only a 2% explained variance between those variables. In other words, there's no relation. So in a world where all else is equal, where all else is equal and held constant, yes, warmer oceans fuel stronger hurricanes. But the problem with that assumption is that the atmosphere is highly complex. Tropical cyclone kinematics involve a lot more dynamics, wind shear, whether or not there's dry air, atmospheric stability. And how those change in a warmer climate varies. And it's not all known. And that's why there's a lot more factors to consider here, and it's not so cut and dry.
It's incredible. Weird. I was just about to say that exact thing. Just about to explain it just the way you did.
That's why you have a guest.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Chris Martz, we'll have more with him. Senior Atmospheric Research Assistant at Millersville University, and we'll get into the weather manipulation situation as well. Coming up. 888-900-3393 with your thoughts.
Pat Gray Unleashed.
All right, we got more with Chris Martz, who's a research assistant at CFACT. What exactly is CFACT, Chris?
CFACT is the Committee for Constructive Tomorrow. We're an NGO that aims at trying to influence energy policy, and we advocate for free market government solutions and rational discussion on climate.
Okay.
And I'm a senior atmospheric science student at Millersville University.
Okay. Awesome. We've got some, I think you provided us with these graphs. We've got some graphs that really tells a completely different story than we hear all the time in the media about global warming and storms and deaths from storms. You would think that the first hurricanes that ever occurred have been in the last 15 years. Right. Just not the case. And we've got this global number of deaths from meteorological disasters. And it goes through this chart from the 1900s to the 2010s. And of course, 1900s featured the Great Galveston hurricane of 1900, which killed maybe up to 10,000 people. And they completely rebuilt Galveston after that and raised the city 17 feet so that what happened then wouldn't happen again. And that's been fairly successful since Galveston hasn't been wiped out again so far. Yeah. But the biggest decade for deaths from these kinds of disasters was the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1940s. You got the 60s in there. We've had about the least amount of deaths. I mean, look at this chart. It's absolutely incredible. Well,
any death is horrible, but
yes,
for sure, with and more people. More people living in areas where the hurricanes strike.
Yes. More people in general and more people living along the coast.
Yeah.
So more people are endangered than ever before, yet fewer are dying. How do people respond when you share this with them?
Well, a lot of times, sometimes a lot of climate change skeptics, people that are on, I say people that are on Team Reality, a lot of them will post this graph as evidence that the climate's not getting worse. However, that's a little bit of a misrepresentation because these trends are a result of obviously better warning coordination and forecast lead times. Because Galveston, they predicted a sunny day that day, and they ended up getting wiped out by 8,000 to 12,000 people got killed by a hurricane.
Yeah, they were pissed at their weather guy.
But what's remarkable about this chart, to your point that you made, is that, and it was an excellent point, is that the population has grown exponentially since the 1900s.
Right.
But the absolute number of deaths, in spite of the population growth, have gone down by 96.2%.
Yeah, look at that.
Since the 1920s peak. And even those numbers are likely underestimated because extreme temperature data doesn't really go before the 1970s or 1980s. And then some of those hurricane data is sparse before the 1940s. So it's likely much higher than that, even in the past, some of these numbers. But that's the data that we do have. And but climate alarmists, the people, a lot of them on the left, what they'll claim is that, well, the climate change is killing people, it's harming people, because that's what the climate crisis distinction revolves around, is how climate change is supposedly negatively impacting the state of human welfare. But there's not one measurable metric of human welfare. They could look at life expectancy, look at the crop yields. They're all at record highs. Number of deaths at all-time record lows. The share of the population malnourished is at record lows. The share of the population living in poverty is at record lows. So if climate change is having this negative impact, it's not at all evident in the data because we are innovative enough in our technologies to mitigate and adapt and overcome whatever challenges Mother Nature throws at us. And that's the important point about that chart, is that we are resilient. And there's no evidence that climate change is having a negative impact on society because we are innovative and we are adaptable.
Does this apply to tornadoes as well?
Yeah, actually, if you look at the number of tornado deaths in the United States, they've gone down significantly. Actually, have good data on that going back to, I think, the 1870s. And it's actually like all-time record lows. And just last year, or in 2022 or 2023, I can't remember which year off the top of my head, but nobody died from lightning for the first time ever, I think, in the United States. So it was all-time record low.
Wow. But what about intensity and frequency of tornadoes? Is there any evidence that that's increased?
Well, tornadoes, the interesting thing about tornadoes is that you would ideally rate tornadoes like hurricanes based on wind speed, but tornadoes are very, very small, compared to hurricanes. So we don't have a whole lot of data on wind speed going back very far. So it's not going to be particularly useful. But tornadoes, we do have tornadoes. Tornadoes are typically rated by damage according to the F or EF scale, the Fujita or enhanced Fujita scale. And that's largely based on damage that is incurred. So it was difficult to tell about this is that back in the day, at say the 1950s and 1960s, tornadoes tend to be rated a little bit higher than they probably actually were based on the amount of damage. So you tended to see more strong to violent tornadoes, EF3, EF4, EF5, or in that case back then, F3, F4, F5, because it wasn't until the 2000s that they adjusted the scale a little bit. But and what's also interesting is that, also important to note rather, is that obviously there's more stuff to destroy now. So you kind of have to normalize it a little bit and look at, a damage maybe done to a barn or a forest to be able to kind of determine the intensity of a tornado. And where today it's a little bit easier because there's more buildings and stuff that probably get destroyed because they're in the path of these events. But if we look at just the actual number of strong to violent tornadoes, EF3, EF4, EF5 in the United States, which is where we have the most tornadoes in the world, so it's really only the data that matters. It's not really something that's a global. They happen everywhere, in a lot of different places, but the United States has the most by far. The number of strong to violent tornadoes are down 45 to 50% since real-time data collection began in 1954. But even if we assume that the older data is rated as biased because it's rated higher in the 1950s and 60s, there has still been a decrease or slight decrease or no trend since the 1970s and 80s in the number of strong to violent tornadoes. The number of total tornadoes, say EF0, 1, 2, and 3, or especially EF0 and EF1, they've gone up a lot, but they kind of flatlined since 1990. So the reason for that is because the EF0s and EF1s are very weak and they're very easily missed because they're on the ground for a short period of time, and we have rural population expansion.
They still do damage.
Jeffy suffered through an EF0.
I did suffer through EF0.
And,
there's certainly, but they definitely are more easily missed in the historical record. So there was a rural population growth, and then about early 1990s, 1991, 92, there's been really no trend in any of the tornado counts, the weaker ones too, because that was when the NextRad WSR 88D radar came online, and we were able to detect these storms better. And everybody has a cell phone camera now, so you spot more. There's more reports, but not necessarily more tornadoes.
We're speaking with Chris Martz, research assistant for CFACT, also senior atmospheric student at Millersville University. Chris, what do you say to people who talk about weather manipulation, that this weather engineering phenomenon that we've seen so much of since Milton and Helene? A lot of people believe that these hurricanes were directed at Florida, and maybe that was so that they could influence the election. People would have a harder time to vote. I mean, do you put any stock in any of that?
No. And the thing is, I think that when people, and this is usually a claim that comes from people on the right, And I think when they do this, when they claim that, well, the weather is, it's that they look at Hurricane Helene and Milton, for example, and they claim that, these hurricanes were really bad, and they were certainly because there was obviously big impacts, and obviously with Helene you had the extratropical remnants and the orographic lift of air over the mountains in the Carolinas when it merged with the trough that caused a lot of problems, similar to Agnes in 1972 and Camille in 1969. Or Diane, I think, in 1955. But when the people on the right, the conservatives, when they claim about weather modification that it's making these storms worse, the government's deliberately doing this. They are playing into the left's hands by ceding ground to them by claiming that the weather is in fact worse than it was, say, a century ago, and we lose ground on this because we are giving fuel to their fire, and when in reality the weather is no more extreme than it was 50, 60, 100 years ago. Now, I can't blame people for being skeptical about, having questions about it, because the government does nothing but lie to us about practically everything. But
Thank you.
And I'm a cynical person myself, so I don't blame people. But there are some conspiracy theories that are just so wackadoodle that it's not even worth consideration, this being one of them. Now, the typical hurricanes are very large and dynamic weather systems for the most part. I mean, we did have Hurricane Oscar a few weeks ago, or last week, that was really, really small, smallest hurricane on record in the Atlantic. But the typical hurricane is on average about 150 miles or 240 kilometers in radius. And so, and according to NOAA's Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory, AOML, hurricanes on average produce 6.015 times 10 to the 14th power watts, which is a measure of joules per second of energy per day in their average life cycle. Now,
we were just discussing this.
6.0 times 10 to the 14th watts of that comes from latent heat release during condensation.
Yeah,
and that's when water condenses in the droplets. Heat is released into the ambient environment to cool the water such that a phase change can occur. And that enhances the convection in the eye wall, the inner ring of intense winds and rain around this eye, and that powers its momentum. 1.5 trillion watts of that energy, or just even, and actually, so this is a very surprising statistic, only 0.25% of that comes from the total kinetic energy produced by the swirling winds. So to be able to steer, much less produce a hurricane through space lasers or cloud seeding, as they usually claim, it would require enough energy to overpower the energy produced by the storm. And humans simply do not have the technological capabilities to do that, because the amount of energy produced by a typical hurricane is more than 200 times the electrical generating capacity of the planet. So it's just not a feasible thing. Now, cloud seeding, then there's going to be listeners saying, what about cloud seeding? Well, cloud seeding, weather modification, has been hypothesized since the late 19th century. And it's actually been routinely tested since the 1940s. And cloud seeding is a process where hygroscopic nuclei, which are tiny particles that have an affinity for water to want to condense onto these particles, and these things include silver iodide, dry ice, which is solid carbon dioxide, or sodium chloride, which is common, or table salt. And those are released into the updrafts of clouds to dial up cloud droplet formation and enhance rainfall.
And that works, right?
I mean, they're
that
doing
does work.
that.
Yes, and that has been routinely tested since the 1940s, and it has been successful when implemented on a very localized scale, such as, again, to disperse fog at airports or to enhance rainfall during drought to help improve irrigation, for farmers. But there have been attempts to try and weaken hurricanes, not intensify them, weaken, with Project Storm Fury and Operation Popeye, which was not for hurricanes, but was used in the Vietnam War. And Operation Popeye was somewhat successful, but Project Storm Fury,
it was to make it rain more on the Viet Cong, right? Isn't that what they used it for?
Correct.
Yeah,
it was somewhat successful. But Project Storm Fury, the theory was that if they could seed clouds with silver iodide, they could fly planes into hurricanes and seed the rain bands and the eye wall with silver iodide, that they could. The ring of intense winds and convection, which is surrounded, that's the eye wall. If they could seed the rain bands that surround the eye wall, they could then weaken the inner eye wall, form a new one, and then that would shift the energy away from the storm center, causing the storm to weaken before landfall.
That didn't work, though, did it?
So yes, and they wanted, and they did this through obviously having the partial conservation of angular momentum in mind. And while it was initially thought to have been successful, it turns out that it was later discovered in a study, Willoughby et al. 1982, that major hurricanes, almost all of them, undergo what's called an eye wall replacement cycle, or EWRC. And that's where the eye wall contracts and a new one forms with a larger radius outside of that, causing a temporary reduction in hurricane intensity. And the inner one eventually erodes and the new one takes over. It causes the storm to get larger in diameter. And it does this all by itself, so it has nothing to do with cloud seeding. And hurricanes obviously these results were inconclusive. So after 21 years, in 1983, they decided to disband it, the project. So it wasn't very successful.
Did they ever try to dump buckets of ice into the hurricane to cool it down?
They did dump.
I think they did, didn't they?
Dry ice into clouds, right? I don't know if that was in response to hurricanes, but they were trying to get water or snow out of it, I think, right? Or were they trying to control hurricanes?
That I'm not 100% sure about, but there have been many attempts in different projects that have attempted to control hurricanes, at least try and weaken them, but it's been futile. So
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, that's fascinating. Appreciate it. You are the research assistant at CFACT, right? Does that take up a lot of your time?
I do more during the summertime because it was my internship and I have a full-time job offer after graduation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun what we do.
Where does this kind of study lead to? Do you want to be a meteorologist on TV, or you just like to research things, or where does this go?
Well, I don't know if I want to do TV, not in today's political climate. I know a lot of TV meteorologists who are in agreement with the stuff that I say, and they just don't enjoy their jobs anymore. And a couple of them actually just recently quit their jobs to go work in different private companies and stuff.
Wow,
right. So I probably want to just stick to. I like research. I love what I love to do, and CFAX provides a good opportunity for that.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, let us know if you ever discover anything that can control these hurricanes. We'd like to hear about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate it. We have a guy who feels differently coming up in a few minutes. His name is, what is his name, Chris? Dane, right? What's his full name? Do you know? Got it there in front of you. Bob. Bob Dane.
Hello,
Dane
Bob. Dave.
Jim Bob Dane.
That was Jim Bob.
Jim Bob Dane. Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to talk to Jim Bob Dane.
I didn't hear Chris say that
about weather manipulation in just a minute. I mean, I think he's
Dane
on
Wigington, right?
Completely on the
Wigington,
other side of the spectrum. Right? He really believes that what geoengineering the weather is definitely happening. And
this guy's right.
This coming guy?
Yes, he's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see, right? We'll see.
Yeah. No, we
coming up.
Already know.
Jeffy already knows, so he didn't need to listen to this.
Gray Unleashed.
Pat Gray is here on the Blaze Radio Network.
Good morning, American. It's Friday.
All right. As so many Americans in the Southwest continue to try to put their lives back together after these two massive storms that just hit them. Helene, followed closely by Milton, and it just turned people's lives upside down, and they'll be working on this for years. I mean, the devastation is unbelievable. According to people who have been there on the ground and seen it, and it's incredible.
And you know, you're talking about the devastation in the Carolinas, but I just got done talking to some people out of Florida that, I mean, there's plenty of devastation there as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure.
It's just bad all around.
Yeah. loss of life, just tragic. And because of, I guess, the path of these hurricanes, a lot of people are suspicious about it. Now, wasn't there an expert in Tampa who said that they're never going to get hit by a major hurricane again?
That's the guy I talked to. That was during the 04, 05. Every day we had a storm.
And he always said, with confidence, they wouldn't hit Tampa.
That Tampa was not going to get a direct hit because of the way that the shelf was, the sea shelf, the Gulf of Mexico shelf is that the hurricane would come up the coast and either shoot back out into the Gulf and then go around, or it would duck under, which is what they've all done.
Interesting.
Which is what they've all done.
And the last storm in Tampa, the last hurricane that hit,
that was
what, 1924 or something
like that.
Yeah, it's been 100 years.
Yeah,
so that's amazing. But anyway, a lot of people believed that these were directed.
Yes,
I don't know why the government would do this. I mess up the election. Make it harder to vote.
Practice.
Maybe there's some lithium available in some places.
Because
so you're trying to wipe out property so you can take it from them?
And that's what they're doing.
That's the implication.
And we just heard the governor of North Carolina say, they're not going to be able to rebuild.
Wow. Interesting.
Oh, really? I thought that was their property. Nope.
Yep. So we thought, well, let's talk to somebody about this. Let's talk to an expert. We have Dane Wigington, executive producer of the documentary The Dimming, also the lead researcher at Geoengineering Watch. Dane, welcome to The Blaze. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for your willingness to address this issue.
You bet. We're always fascinated by this kind of stuff, and we don't shy away from it. We like to look into it and hear both sides. And so, your theory is that these hurricanes are directed. The government does have the ability. Do they have the ability in your mind to both create and direct them?
Oh boy!
Not sure if the image is working on your end. I'm not sure if I have enough feed. If you guys are getting a strong signal on your end, I can.
Yeah, it's.
I'm not sure if the image.
The video's a little frozen.
Yeah, yes, it is.
I can.
Yeah, what we should probably do is
connections if need be.
Yeah, we should probably switch to a landline if you have one. So we'll find out here in a second.
Damn, government is already.
Well, yeah, they came and they cut his.
Already
that's a fact. They came and his cable got cut before this interview that was gonna make this work, right?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. His high speed, fiber optic thing.
So he's obviously not with the Lumbee tribe.
Right.
That's obvious. It didn't need to be said.
Yeah,
I was going to say it.
If he was with the Lumbee tribe, we'd have a great connection.
It'd be almost like he was here. It'd be a hologram.
We wouldn't be frustrated right now.
That's right. We could surf the internet like we like.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? All right. In the meantime, while we get him back on the phone, let me tell you about the Jace case. We just had Hurricane Milton, as we've been discussing, and Helene, and you see how life can turn upside down in a heartbeat. And if it happens to you, you want to be prepared as best you can be and have the medication that you need just in case. There's life-saving meds available that you can have on hand with the Jace case. You just go to jace.com, fill out a quick form, and then a doctor reviews that to make sure you don't have allergies that are going to preclude the use of these. And they'll send this to you, and you'll have it on hand for you and your loved ones in case of any kind of bacterial infections during tough times or during a supply chain problem. Life-saving antibiotics for emergency use, or they also have add-ons, things like EpiPens and ivermectin, and go over the list. They've got it online for you. Go to jace.com, enter the promo code PAT at checkout. You'll get a discount on your order. That's promo code PAT at JASE, jace.com.
And now, Pat Gray returns.
All right, I think we got Dane back up and rolling here. Dane Wigington, executive producer of the documentary The Dimming, also lead researcher at Geoengineering Watch. So, Dane, I was wondering if you believe that the government can both create and direct hurricanes.
In regard to creation, we never make any such claim. We can't know that. In regard to steering a storm, we can definitely state that is happening because we recorded it. And I heard on the former guest's argument that because it takes a specific amount of energy, or a specific amount of energy is created in a storm, that it takes an equal amount of energy to steer or direct the storm. All available data would completely refute that. In fact, we do know from Project Cirrus, which I know you correctly mentioned, Pat, that in 1947, the dumping of 80 pounds of dry ice into a storm strategically appeared to have such a profound effect on that storm that it made a 130-degree turn and made landfall when it was otherwise going out to sea. Lawsuits were pending, and the U.S. military then backtracked on that. What you see on the screen now, the frequency transmission energizing of the NextRad network, patented processes of frequency transmission that are known to repel air masses that are seeded with electrically conductive particles. Is it just a strange coincidence that that storm tracks in a way that would be a direct response of the repelling effect that is known to occur when these transmissions take place? So again, we've recorded storm after storm after storm, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Ian, and we can speculate on the agendas or objectives, but the fact that these patented processes of hurricane manipulation are occurring is undeniable, Pat.
And who is doing it? Is it the U.S. military? Do they have a separate entity that figures out when and where to do this and why?
I can tell you again what we know as a matter of record. We have government documents, Senate documents at geoengineeringwatch.org, one in particular 800 pages long, that outlines not just specific organizations within the U.S. government that are compartmentalized but a part of these operations, but also intergovernmental cooperation. This is very important. This is, your listeners can search this, Pat, at geoengineeringwatch.org, massive Senate document. The important sections are highlighted. We don't expect them to trudge through 800 pages, but this document, again, U.S. Senate document going back to 1978, specifically describes intergovernmental cooperation with these programs, even between otherwise adversarial nations, aka China, Russia, US, because you can't just geoengineer over your own border. And we know, because we have historical record, that the Soviet weather mod scientists were touring US weather mod facilities in the height of the Cold War in 1968, and our scientists were touring theirs. So again, this is not just a matter of any kind of speculation, it's historical record. And Pat, have you by chance seen the film of former U.S. President Lyndon Johnson in 1962, ranting like a lunatic, stating we had the power to control the world's cloud layer then?
Yeah, we have.
And he who controls the weather controls the world. Have you seen that?
Yeah, we've got that here. Go ahead and roll that.
And that message calls for new frontiers, new visions. It calls for us taking the steps now that will make us no longer second in space and in science. It lays the predicate and the foundation for a space communication satellite that will permit the people of the world to see one television program at the same time throughout the world.
Wow.
Think about that kind of communication.
Think about it.
And think about the opportunity that will provide. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite.
Weather satellite. Okay.
That will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer. And ultimately to control the weather. And he who controls the weather will control the world.
Wow.
There it is. Yeah.
But that's just a United States president. Said, what was he, vice president at the time? That's
the president today. The president who's in office today
called it
told us
ridiculous.
it was ridiculous.
Right. Right.
So, what do you have to say about that, Dane?
Those are all great points, guys. And again, the fact that they had to go to such length to have babbling Joe Biden try to spit out a line to refute this shows where they're at.
That's the big tip-off. That's the big tip-off. When the government tries to say a conspiracy theory is hogwash, that should be the
just makes you believe it more.
Right, sure does. Right. So, Dane, I have a quick question. This is Keith Malinak. We just played the video of the Hurricane Helene. So are you saying that what we saw on that screen there, that is directing Helene on the track that she took? That's accurate? That's what you're saying?
I am.
Okay, so
I am.
So my question is, specifically, what were they trying to accomplish with directing its path? That's my first question. And then my second question would be, where would it have gone naturally? Where would the hurricane track naturally, by your estimation? And I realize these are both, you may not be able to answer these, but I'm just curious. What were they trying to accomplish, and where would it have gone if they hadn't been manipulating its direction?
To start with, on the agenda and objective part, we can speculate on that. There's no way we can know all the potential agendas and objectives being carried out. It is interesting that the Piedmont lithium mine that was hemorrhaging hundreds of millions of dollars because the residents were not cooperating with that mine. The mine had Pentagon contracts due in 2025. We know we're being shut down in that supply chain around the world. It is interesting that those residents are no longer a problem. That's one potential agenda or objective, but certainly there are likely many more. And whatever they are, whatever they may be, the bottom line is that storm was steered. Let's go to Hurricane Harvey. How could the so-called forecasters know 7 days in advance that storm was going to go where it did and sit there and spin for 3 days, dumping 50 inches of water? We recorded up close the frequency transmissions that prevented that storm from moving on land and breaking up. So the bottom line is where a storm may have gone if it wasn't manipulated. We can speculate on that as well. But if we look all the way back again to Project Cirrus 1947, the dumping of only 80 pounds of dry ice strategically into the storm appeared to so affect its trajectory that, again, there were lawsuits pending, and then they tried to backtrack on the initial acknowledgement that they indeed manipulated the storm with a very minimal amount of input. And in regard, again, to that argument that because a hurricane creates a certain amount of energy, it takes an equal amount of energy to manipulate it, that's patently false. One single human being can change the course of a 10 million pound freight train with a single lever. It takes about 400 watts to manipulate that train. I'm just saying, just because you have a certain amount of kinetic energy doesn't mean it can't be steered and manipulated. And again, these are patented processes. Do you guys remember the Chinese government stating, "Don't worry about rain in the Olympics. It won't. We'll make sure."
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
And how about the recent Dubai flood?
Right.
Coincidentally, just days after Dubai said it was going to ditch the dollar, they were.
But we have no way of knowing that's the case. Really, I mean, we're just speculating.
On the dollar?
Yeah. I mean, no, we knew that happened, and we know the event happened. We don't know that they are both
could
connected.
be just a wild coincidence.
Just a wild coincidence that they've initially admitted was tainted with weather modification. They initially admitted that on the record in Dubai, and when it started to create the media storm it was creating, they walked that narrative back. Geoengineeringwatch.org recorded over the Persian Gulf frequency transmission signatures on cloud cover. It's very visible. It's perfect herringbone patterns on the clouds. That's a frequency transmission the day before and the day of this event. So if we go back further to other potential weather mod interventions, Mexico pushed back against these programs in early 2023. They also pushed back against some of the Middle Eastern policies. Then we had Hurricane Otis, an insignificant tropical depression. There wasn't even warnings issued, and in less than 24 hours, it underwent extreme intensification into the strongest Cat 5 hurricane to ever hit that section of the world, decimated Acapulco. They'll never come back. In regard to strengthening the storms, and we hear that term a lot now, rapid intensification, can they help to intensify a storm by manipulating atmospheric pressure zones with weapons of mass destruction like HAARP? Short answer, yes. The science is clear.
This is fascinating. We'll get into more with Dane coming up here in a minute. Dane Wigington is who we're speaking with, lead researcher at Geoengineering Watch. First, let me tell you about making a huge change in your life. You're selling your home. You're buying a home. It's a huge investment. You want to get the most out of your home. You want to get the most money for it, or you want to get the most home for your money. That's the way it works.
That's the way that works.
Yeah, I just learned that this time.
I have actually failed at that. If that's the way it's supposed to work.
Until this time, I had to.
Yeah.
In virtually every case.
Okay.
But when you have a great realtor at your side, there's a really good chance that you're going to have a great experience, because a great realtor can help you make the decisions that help you sell your home for the most amount of money and save you money in the long run by, recommending, like, if you're going to do some changes that you're not going to get your money out of or back from, the realtor will know that. They also know what buyers are looking for, so they can direct you in the right way. And when you're buying a home, to find the right neighborhood, the place where your kids are going to grow up, it's so important to have a great realtor. Go to realestateagentsitrust.com. It's a free service we provide to you. We just get you together with the realtor, then the rest is up to you. realestateagentsitrust.com.
Saying what you're thinking. Pat Gray Unleashed.
Great to have you with us. Thanks for being here. 888-900-3393. We're speaking with Dane Wigington, who is the lead researcher at Geoengineering Watch. Dane, right before the break, you mentioned HAARP, which is something I'm really curious about.
Yeah, we hear about it from time to time.
Yeah.
No question. But, I mean...
However, when you bring it up in relation to, well, there's some weather engineering going on here, they're like, oh, don't be ridiculous. It's a little agency up in Alaska. They can't do anything about this. Tell me about HAARP.
HAARP's a weapon of mass destruction. It's an ionosphere heater. Is it a coincidence? Pat, you remember in May when we had the very profound Aurora Borealis effect?
Yeah.
Is it just a coincidence that 10 days before that event, the HAARP facility issued a warning to the FAA to keep air traffic out of its airspace during the exact window of that event? Is that just a coincidence?
I want to say yes
we
to
know,
that.
Yeah. And we know that HAARP can transmit 3.5 million watts of power into the electrically charged ionosphere. It causes a chain reaction. Again, small input, massive result. So there again, the argument that it takes an equal amount of power to affect these systems is not scientifically valid. So bottom line is, what are they doing with these weapons? The patent holder, Bernard Eastland, even acknowledged that this superheating of the atmosphere, which is what it causes when you trigger this chain reaction, causes the atmosphere to bulge up and down. The stated defense purpose is to create resistance for an incoming ICBM. What happens below that high pressure heat dome? That's a term we hear all the time now.
Yes.
We have compressing air that creates extreme heat on the surface and can help manipulate the jet stream. Even the patent holder, again, Bernard Eastland, stated this on the record. So the bottom line is, the notion that I heard your former guest state this is some sort of right-wing issue, I'm not on any side of the political fence. This is simply a science fact issue. And you referenced Project Popeye earlier, Pat, which was important. Thank you. They were so successful at manipulating precipitation during the Vietnam War that by 1976, international INMOD treaties, environmental modification treaties, were passed forbidding weather manipulation in wartime. So, again, this is simple science fact, and the notion that Joe Biden has to come on and try to refute this ought to be a big red flag.
Anything Joe Biden says should be a red flag. Yes. But maybe we should back up for a second, and just for anybody who doesn't know what HAARP is, what exactly is that? It's I believe, isn't it it's an arm of the U.S. military, or started out that way?
Okay, it's a directable ionosphere heater, and in 2016, I believe they put up a big smoke screen that they were going to shut the facility down. They were going to bulldoze it. And we stated at geoengineeringwatch.org, never going to happen. And it never did happen, of course. It was never non-operational, still is today. They pretend it's a benign research project when it's anything but. And if we look at a primary component of all of this we're discussing, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, cloud albedo enhancement, those are the science terms for what we see happening in our skies. Is this condensation or is it a sprayed particulate dispersion? We have up-close photographs of the retrofit nozzles mounted on wing pylons. That's HARP. Thank you. That's one of about 100 ionosphere heaters around the globe. HARP's the biggest and the most powerful.
There's 100 of those?
Oh,
and
I don't know that I knew that there was 100 of those.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Different designs. I said ionosphere heaters, not that design. That's the biggest and the most powerful.
Okay.
And that stands for the High Frequency Active Oral Research Program. That's what HARP is. Auroral.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And so the ionization of the atmosphere, which makes the HARP facility much more effective, when you're saturating the sky with electrically conductive particulates, and again, these are sprayed dispersions. That film, again, those are C-17 Globemasters. That's a military tanker jet, and condensation doesn't behave in that manner, period. Those jets are outfitted with a high bypass turbofan jet engine, as are commercial carriers. That's a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through that engine is not combusted. By design, it's nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. You see.
Yeah, so what you're saying is, because the explanation for this is always that, well, it's a frozen exhaust. It's coming out of the airplane, and it's really cold up there, and it is. And it freezes, and that's what you see. But you're saying that's not accurate.
With these particular planes.
First, again, with these planes and planes with commercial markings, and we know the U.S. DoD has leased commercial aircraft by the hundreds with commercial markings. Why would they need that? Bottom line, we have up-close film footage of these aircraft and others, nozzles visible.
Yeah, being retrofitted,
turning on and off, period. So the condensation trail narrative doesn't hold water. And guys, have you ever seen a documentary of someone in Antarctica that's talking and their breath is condensing? Do they have a cloud starting to form over their head? That's not what condensation does.
That's a good point. All right, we got more with Dane Wigington, the lead researcher at Geoengineering Watch, coming up here in a minute. Fascinating stuff. I want to talk to him about. Shouldn't there be no drought? I mean, if you've got the ability to seed clouds and to produce rain, and it's pretty, effective, we should never have drought.
Right. If the people at the controls are overlords.
Right. So we'll get into that and more coming up.
This is Pat Gray Unleashed.
All right. 888-900-3393. Pat Unleashed on Twitter. Dane Wigington, the lead researcher at Geoengineering Watch, is speaking to us today. We were talking about weather engineering because there's been a lot of talk online about weather engineering. And did they direct these hurricanes to Florida and up the southeastern coast? So a lot of questions. I don't even know where. So many. One of the things I wanted to get to, Dane, is the cloud seeding situation. And if we have the ability to cause rain and it's effective and it actually works, why is there still drought taking place anywhere on this planet?
Well, one would have to assume that those behind these programs are somehow benevolent, which couldn't be further from the truth. Mm-hmm. So what most don't know is climate intervention operations are much more effective at diminishing and dispersing precipitation, as the Chinese government announced during the Olympics. Right. Remember, they said it wouldn't rain. And you have private companies that even advertise for enough money, they will make sure it doesn't rain over your event. This is, again, patented, not disputed technology. So the fact that they are blocking off precipitation from massive regions of the U.S. now, we can speculate on the agendas or objectives, but we can see these operations on satellite imagery. We know they're blocking precipitation. And bottom line is, who's really pulling the strings of power here, the occupant of the White House or those who print the money? So the bottom line is, when the former guest seemed to acknowledge that the very small regional local weather modification programs that are generally a single engine propeller driven aircraft with a few flares on the wings, that can affect the weather, but that a military KC-135 that can carry 100 tons of material in a single payload can't, that doesn't fit with known science. Bottom line is, these programs are real and ongoing. And Pat, about that's one patent. We have many more, and that's our film, The Dimming, by the way, and can be viewed for free at the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. In that film, there are former U.S. Air Force generals acknowledging these programs, former Canadian Minister of Defense acknowledging these programs, U.S. presidential cabinet members acknowledging these programs, former government scientists acknowledging these programs. And Pat, think about this. Why would there be right now an illegal federal gag order on all National Weather Service and all National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration employees, the nation's weathermen? Why would they have an illegal gag order on them if there wasn't something massive to hide? And
wait, they have a gag order on them for what?
All agency operations.
Period. So if you had them on, say, Fox News, they could not go on Fox News. They couldn't answer any questions about.
What are we gagging them for? With?
Again, the gag order is a very broad brush. All agency operations. I had a NOAA scientist state to my face at the Marine Lab on the U.S. coast, we all know this is going on. We have no First Amendment protection. We don't know what to do. Bottom line, it's like an NDA. Do we think they're going to be lining up to really complain? Who blew the whistle on the torture programs? John Carrico. Who was the only person to go to jail? John Carrico. We shouldn't think these people will be lining up to expose this. And many involved are simply compartmentalized. Was the U.S. military pilot in Vietnam that was spraying Agent Orange on the ground told this is going to kill your comrade on the ground eventually?
Probably not. Yeah,
right. Probably not. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In regard to the environmental groups and their hypocrisy, if I could bring that up, because we certainly feel that they are behaving with criminal hypocrisy at this point. Attorneys at geoengineeringwatch.org have communicated with all the attorneys from major environmental groups, Sierra Club, Greenpeace, and the rest, and they have stated to us that they would not address these programs because they didn't want to lose their 501c3 nonprofit. Is that not the epitome of hypocrisy? And for the so-called renewable energy that they are pushing, solar, wind, and hydro, the three primary forms of alternative energy, all of which I have in my home, by the way. That's what brought me into this issue. My background with Bechtel Power. My home was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. I was losing massive amounts of my solar photovoltaic uptake from whatever these planes were emitting, which I knew couldn't be condensation. I began to test my precipitation and found climate engineering elements in it, starting with aluminum. Wow. So how can they push these three forms of alternative energy and not acknowledge climate engineering, which is decimating the production of all three forms? It's blocking rain, which is reducing hydropower. It's blocking the sun, which reduces solar power, and it affects surface wind flow because it affects convection, which is reducing wind power. And they won't acknowledge these programs.
Dane, to your point there about the gag order, I noticed, just a few days ago, that NOAA, part of the government, actually posted a tweet that said, "Fact check, debunking weather modification claims. No one creates or steers hurricanes. The technology does not exist." I mean, first, again, to our point earlier, that when the government is protesting like that. And then Christy Legendre posted underneath that, "Why are you," talking to NOAA, "why are you removing, you've removed 103 pages of weather modification reports from your website," which, I mean, that's a little shocking in of itself.
Suspicious.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of buttress your point on the gag order situation there and this kind of new phenomenon in the last few weeks, since that's become a big topic. But you talked about what is being sprayed and what is for weather modification purposes. In your documentary, The Dimming, you talk about how the trees, the plankton, the insects, the collapsing of bee populations, what is this stuff doing to our health as human beings?
It's wreaking havoc. Yeah. Why would it have any different effect? We're just a larger organism. It takes a little longer to break things down. So why isn't it headlines all over the globe, Keith, that we have peer-reviewed science study to prove aluminum is decimating bees? This is peer-reviewed study. They're exhibiting symptoms that resemble Alzheimer's and dementia in a human being. They can't even find their way back to the hive because of massive aluminum exposure. This is happening thousands of miles away from any industry. We know aluminum is a primary element in climate engineering patents, aluminum nanoparticles, because it's reflective. That's why they use it. It's electrically conductive as well. Why aren't studies like that headlines everywhere? And polymer fibers, and this is important, that's shown up in all our precipitation tests as well, along with graphene. And we know that polymer nanoparticles are showing up now in the human body everywhere. All our internal organs and our brains. Yep. It's affecting cognitive ability.
In my bottled water. I mean, we're busy inputting it into our body every day.
And I thought it was very important that you pointed out in the documentary that there isn't a living entity on Earth, whether it's humans, insects, viruses, anything, that has a use for aluminum. So why are we spraying this? Oh, it's just bad stuff.
Exactly.
Who has the ability to do this? United States, China, anybody else?
We would argue those who print the money control it all. They control media, they control the narrative, they control militaries, thus they control governments. That's who's actually pulling the levers of power here. And in regard to the use of bioavailable aluminum, yes, you're completely correct. Again, it's toxic to all life forms, period, no exceptions. I cornered the world's most recognized geoengineer at an international geoengineering conference on that exact question. Have any toxicological studies been done, human or environmental? And he dodged the question initially, stating that there's a lot of particle matter in the atmosphere anyway, a little more won't hurt. Wait a minute, Dr. David Keith, those particles aren't aluminum. Have you studied aluminum? His answer was no. Could terrible things happen tomorrow? We don't know. What kind of an answer is that from the world's most recognized scientist?
A really bad one. A really bad one.
Yeah. So do you believe that he's lying or that they actually haven't?
It's a very difficult question to answer. Again, we have whole industries pushing safe and effective when it's anything but. So I would state that you have a lot of programming that is so total that perhaps they even believe their own delusions. Right. I can't state for certain, but the bottom line is we have the second most recognized climate engineer, Dr. Ken Caldera. We own the audio of him stating in his own words what he did for the U.S. Department of Defense was to design ways of spraying pathogens into clouds to infect the populations below. Polymer fibers and graphene are used biologically, militarily, as biological carrier platforms to carry pathogens from the clouds to the ground. Should that be alarming to all of us?
Yes.
3 years ago, we had a pretty big event for Texas. We call it Snowmageddon because it actually snowed in Texas, and it normally doesn't, but it was butt cold. I mean, it was frigid for what?
Many people lost their power.
2 weeks, lost our power.
Well below zero.
Well below zero. It was colder here than it was at the North Pole on certain days. Do you believe that was part of the engineering of weather?
I know it was. We're testing this type of chemical composition that we now call snow.
Wow.
And it's full of the exact same elements named in climate engineering patents for chemical ice nucleation. So nature doesn't make it 0 degrees in Dallas when it's 85 degrees at the approximate same latitude in Florida and 33 degrees warmer at the North Pole. So bottom line, Chinese scientists openly announced they were doing exactly this. Popular Science covered it. The Guardian covered it. MSNBC, CNN. But if you bring it up here, suddenly we need, again, babbling Joe Biden to tell us it isn't so.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is this is a matter of historical record. In fact, it's been covered by major sources in other countries, but here it's not allowed. And again, we need to change that current paradigm.
Now, do you believe so? Do you have any thoughts on who did it? Was it the United States doing it to its own people? Was it China doing it to test something out or to hurt Texas in some way? What do you think happened there?
Oh, this is absolutely our own DOD and private defense sources, period. There's no chance that some other country is going to be able to conduct some kind of operation like this over over our airspace without us being completely aware of it. So, again, we can speculate on the agendas and objectives.
Come across, we didn't know.
Right. Yeah, we can speculate on the agendas and objectives, but the bottom line is over our space, it's certainly us. And interestingly enough, when the INMOD treaties were passed in 76 after Project Popeye was so successful in Vietnam, they didn't restrict a government from conducting experiments over its own terrain, over its own population. So that's interesting as well to us.
Tell us about Hurricane Otis. I think you briefly touched on that, but what was the situation with that particular hurricane? We heard very little about it.
Again, if we tie all this together, Pat, and that's a great example, and we have Johnson stating he who controls the weather controls the world. So this is a crown jewel covert weapon of the climate engineers, of the controllers. They can bring populations to their knees without those populations even knowing they're under assault. So in early 2023, Mexico appeared to push back against these programs.
Right.
Later in the year, they did not go along with policies in the Middle East. And is it just a coincidence? Again, in whatever other aspects there may be we don't know of, but the fact that meteorologists had never, ever seen a storm behave in this manner ever before, an insignificant tropical depression with no warnings given to people in Acapulco, in less than 24 hours, it intensified to the strongest Cat 5 storm ever to hit that part of the world, laid absolute waste to Acapulco.
I didn't even hear that. I've never heard that was the strongest storm ever.
Yeah.
That just hit Acapulco.
So weird, too.
We didn't even know about it.
That was weird.
Nothing. And that should be a massive red flag also. If you haven't seen a flyover, Pat, of Acapulco post-storm, take a look. It looks like something from a post-apocalyptic movie. And how many heard this? At the same time Hurricane Helene was coming in and laying waste to North Carolina, Acapulco got hit again with Hurricane John. So again, there's a lot going on that we don't hear about here in the U.S., and that should be a big red flag.
Guess I should probably sell my timeshare in Acapulco now.
Yeah, too
Might
late.
be a good idea.
So Dane, one of the more jaw-dropping moments from that documentary, The Dimming, was the 75-pound ice balls in Lake Michigan 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
What's that all about?
It's chemical ice nucleation. It causes a buildup of ice around that chemical core. You're seeing the same phenomenon on the Baltic shores, the Arctic Sea. That is absolutely not nature. Guys, you've seen how much massive hail falls now, right? Baseball and softball size hail now the norm.
Mm-hmm.
That's chemical ice nucleation. That's why you're having these temperature whiplash events where literally it can go from 80 degrees to snow or frozen precipitation in a day and back to 80 the next day. Chemical ice nucleation, patented processes.
That's special.
Isn't it?
That's special. Well, I mean, we're just doing things, and we don't know what the consequences are going to be on the other end. That's great.
Or care. We don't know or care. Mm-hmm. Amazing. So what can be done about this? Anything? What do Americans do with this information?
I argue if we could create a critical mass, if we could push this issue fully to light, and I'm very grateful to all of you for your voices in doing so, the fur would fly, because we have military brothers and sisters that would realize what they're participating in isn't some benevolent planetary saving endeavor. It's self-extermination. So again, where the soldiers, you guys have seen the nuclear detonations in Nevada where the soldiers jump out of the trench and run toward the blast zone. Mm-hmm. All of them died early deaths. Were they told that would happen? Of course not. How many people know that from those blasts in Nevada, we have peer-reviewed study to prove that no less than 500,000 Americans eventually died from the downstream fallout? How many people know that? Again, while we're watching political theater here, there's no disclosure of what's happening around the globe or this kind of experimentation. So, and back to the biological part, if I could finish with this. For people who think the government wouldn't conduct biological experiments on U.S. civilians, going back as far as 1977, the Washington Post published that even to that point, the U.S. military had conducted no less than 239 open-air biological tests on innocent, unknowing civilians. Business as usual.
Wow. And we know they've done that. I mean, that's proven fact. The other interesting aspect of this, though, is if we have this capability, we shouldn't be concerned about climate change at all. Should we? If we can manipulate the weather, let's do it. Let's cool it down a bit. Do they have temperature control as well as whether or not it rains?
Climate intervention operations were first fully deployed immediately after World War II over the polar regions, and it did have a profound initial effect. But there are consequences. You don't get something for nothing with nature.
Right.
And the more they conduct these operations, the more overall damage they do, and the more they double down on these operations to try to mask some of that damage that their operations did in the first place. Is that not the definition of insanity?
No kidding.
Again, temporary toxic surface cooling at the cost of an even worse overall damage and thus warming to the planet, because these particles, although they can deflect some daytime heat, which is the stated purpose, they trap more heat than they deflect. They destroy the ozone layer. They disrupt the hydrological cycle. Lots of downstream consequences.
So that's climate change.
Right?
That's climate change.
What we would argue at geoengineeringwatch.org is there can't be any legitimate discussion of climate anything from any perspective, and this applies to all sides of the fence, without first and foremost acknowledging and addressing this elephant in the equation.
Do you think that will ever happen?
I think we're not going to have a choice for much longer. The damage done now is cataclysmic, and the bottom line is they're desperately trying to hide these programs. If you see how hard they push back against what happened with Hurricane Helene. I have U.S. congressmen calling me at home from the Carolinas, from Connecticut, Tennessee, where we passed legislation, by the way. Did you see that Tennessee has passed a law that bans climate engineering over their airspace, although it's not enforceable? Symbolically, it matters.
At least they know, but they're saying you can't do that. Nothing's going to happen. And we didn't even talk about, we're talking about weather, but, let's not forget about Hawaii. And
the lasers, the green lasers that were spotted on Hawaii. You have some thoughts on that, or any information on what was going on there? Is that what caused the fire?
What we can say definitively in Hawaii, the source of ignition is a completely separate subject. So what we can say is what is setting the template for issues like Lahaina to happen. And we can definitively say that is climate engineering. Anomalous high pressure to the north spinning clockwise, anomalous low pressure to the south spinning counterclockwise. Between you have a wind tunnel, thus a bellows effect. So whatever the source of ignition, when you have that wind tunnel bellows effect blowing fire horizontally at 80 miles an hour, you're going to torch through anything that's in its path. And these particles are desiccants, and that's important. Accelerants. They're incendiaries. They're also desiccants, which dries out the atmosphere in certain regions, which they did to Hawaii prior to. It was declared a flash drought just before this event. But the incendiary dust, aluminum, is such an effective incendiary that it's used in thermite military demolitions. So you have this incendiary dust settling down to the surface on structures, on foliage, and that certainly has to intensify the fire behavior. So we have fire agencies now scratching their heads wondering why these fires are so uncontrollable.
So Dane, from where you sit there at geoengineeringwatch.org, have you seen anything that would, down in the Gulf right now with that disturbance, that you would want to go on the record as what we could expect? I don't know. Have you seen anything as to what may become patty and what we might be able to predict 7-10 days out here?
There is no way we can know when they're manipulating these systems what the agenda will be. You guys saw Hurricane Milton spun up far faster than initially scheduled.
Yep.
It spun to a strong Cat 5 and it drifted southeast and hung up a bit on the Yucatan Peninsula. There's a massively powerful transmitter in Cancun, which was energized. We recorded that energizing, which had, the repelling effect, bumped that storm back onto its scheduled track. So they have that kind of sway over these storms. Again, this is a matter of record where these transmitters are and what they do. And they have the ability to, and have had the ability for decades, to make or break these storms. We're not claiming anything on the forming. The oceans are very warm. They can certainly spawn cyclonic rotations. But the technology absolutely exists to make or break these storms. So again, why aren't they? That would be assuming that there's some benevolence in this equation, which there isn't.
Okay. Wow. Where do people go if they want to hear more and to watch, of course, the documentary?
Geoengineeringwatch.org. We're the largest, most visited website in the world in this subject. No politics, no advertising. The dimming is there for free. We made it available for free the moment it was done. So again, we're only trying to encourage objective investigation into this issue. I'm very grateful to all of you for your voices in this endeavor.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Dane.
That was awesome.
Fascinating stuff. Dane
on one
Wigington.
hand, it was awesome. On the other hand,
frightening.
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I know. I know. In the lead up to this, I was doing some research online, trying to see what people are saying about it online, websites and social media and whatever. And very little. But what is said is like, oh, please, we don't have this technology.
But
the
that leads into what he's talking about
exist.
with this gag order, which
but also
amazing.
There are patents. There are U.S. patents about the machines that he's talking about that they use in order to do this. I mean, one patent after another. How many are there here? I've got, I don't know, 5 or 6,
7, yeah.
7. I don't know. It's amazing, and it's pretty skeptical going into it, and I'm not sure where I stand on it.
I know, and you got to believe if we know about these patents, what do we don't know? What is it that we don't know?
Yeah,
and I mean, he obviously is telling us that we don't know a whole lot. That's being done to us.
But what we know is already, with patents and headlines and people are speaking about it. It's a lot of information that we know.
Hang on.
With the patents?
So Pat and I have this thing now where I think we just kind of communicate when you're saying something over there. We just kind of look.
Yeah, you're both racist.
We kind of look at each other like, we got to call him out on that.
This has nothing to do with race.
We got to call him out on that one.
It has nothing to do with race.
It does, though.
Nothing. No.
All I hear is racism.
White people do this.
Yep.
Hispanics do it. I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's a bizarre phenomenon.
It's because I was reading it.
Patents.
If I was not reading it, I would say patents.
Mountain. Bill Clinton.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Did you hear that?
Stop!
Did you hear that? Okay, so when he's reading it, it's patents. When he's not reading it, it's patents.
Yeah.
Patents. And you don't have to overemphasize the T. Just
I don't know which one I
mean, you're not happy with that.
At least
you're not happy with either one.
Make an effort on the T. Why do you change PATENTS to PAU?
There's just no satisfying you.
No not when you're saying patents.
Yeah, but then you go over the top with the patents. I mean, you're not going to make us happy in here, bro.
Definitely not.
All right, we'll see you on Monday. We're going to the mountains this weekend, so
nice.
This is Pat Gray Unleashed.